I was, you know who Bill Maher is? You ever, what show, is he on? I've only seen him on some news shows. Does he have an HBO show or something? It's on cable, HBO, is it? Yeah, I don't get HBO. But boy, he's a nasty kind of caustic kind of guy. He's totally anti-religion, thinks God is ridiculous and all that's ridiculous, you know. I find him offensive, you know, really. But at the same time, I think there's he represents, I think, a major component. It's like a facet of modern mentality that I think we do well to attend to and pay attention to. Because I think that kind of mentality that Bill Maher just represents, he's like the archetypical embodiment of it. Is really permeating the world, permeating our culture. And basically what that is they just look at the whole spiritual religious thing and they say it doesn't make any sense. You know, these people are, you know, from his perspective, they're just, just fools. Fools. And he thinks people are stupid if they can believe in God or anything. And I mean, give me a little space here to hear me out, because my initial statement, if you take it isolated, it's going to come out completely wrong. But from one perspective, if you look at what he said, he's completely right. And what I mean by that is I think if you look at the modern expressions or what people try to say about religion and stuff today, it doesn't make sense, you know. But the problem is he throws the baby out with the bathwater when he says, okay, that's what religion is, that's what they say God is, I reject it, false, end of story. Because what it does, I think, really is it speaks to the idea that we're at a point where we need a deeper understanding of it. You know, we don't reject it. And I think it's incredibly beautiful that people, even without the rigors of a rational explanation that really makes sense and really holds up to an analysis, so that the Bill Mahers of the world could look at it and say, yeah, it's right. Even without that, there's something inside, an inner knowing that people have, that they say, okay, maybe I can't even look at it on a level of whether or not it makes sense, but I believe it, I know it. Because there's something about the human state where we know deep inside our soul that there is such a thing as the divine. And we know a lot about it, really. We know that it's a source of oneness. It's a source that unifies. It's a source that feeds and heals and protects. That's really remarkable. That just on a purely intuitive level, really, I think all human beings sense that. I even think Bill Maher senses it. But the problem is he feels that, and then he hears what he was told from childhood about what God is, and he just can't make sense of that, so he rejects God, and this, what he's feeling inside is his soul or the divinity within, or whatever, however you want to say it. He just calls it a different thing. Oh, that's just my humanity. But see, what he does when he does it is he strips it of much of what is available to him. He kind of sterilizes it, unfortunately, you know. And I was brought up, my father was an electrical engineer. My parents believed in God and everything, but nevertheless, my father was an electrical engineer. My brother has a PhD in physics. I was brought up very rational. I was a math and physics major in undergrad. And so for me to reconcile all that, it had to make sense. And it didn't. And so really, I dedicated my life. I didn't sit there and say, I'm going to dedicate my life to it, but just, I couldn't help it. I had to figure it out. I had to understand it. What's going on? What is this universe? And I got to make sense of it, you know? And it led me in the direction it did, to the point where, you know what? Spirituality does make sense if you're willing to take the time. If you're willing to really look at it, it does make sense. And when you make sense out of it, then questions that seem insurmountable, the answers avail themselves. They make themselves readily available. And so not only does it satisfy your longing to sort of integrate the rational part of your being with the spiritual part of your being, but also you can start to fathom the answers to such unfathomable questions as, you know, if there's a God, then why do children suffer? Or any of these kind of questions, you know. But it's interesting, you know, we have a lot of construction workers that come up here and, you know, Baptists and things, and sometimes I sit and I talk with them, and I found it very interesting that even they say, you know, that they go and they try to hear their ministers speak or something, and they say you can't ask them questions because they don't know. You know? And on one side, that's unfortunate. On another side, there's a beauty to it because they know on a feeling level, they know inside themselves that God is there and God is right. And there's truth to it, and they dedicate their lives to it. But how rewarding it must be to think that there is an explanation where, yeah, it can make sense. It's not just based on this inner feeling and this idea that, oh, I have to believe in this, and somehow deep inside I know that there's a God. But to have it come blossom right out to the surface. And that's, in a nutshell, that's what we do here. Now, somebody might hear that, oh, well, that sounds awfully intellectual, sounds awfully heady, you know, but it's not. You know, I compare it to music, you know. Music, why do we like music? We don't like music because it's mathematically precise and based in music theory and all that. We like music because it makes our hearts soar. It's pure feeling. And like that, spirituality, why do we like spirituality? Because it's the way it feels. It feeds us. It gives us, it nurtures the heart and our relationship with all of life. But nevertheless, there is the mathematically precise component to it, just as there's the mathematically precise component to music. And as you get more and more of that structure within your being, a musician has to know the scales to play beautiful music, you see. And like that, if you learn the other part, then your appreciation of God and your appreciation of divinity deepens and becomes more nourishing, and you become a great musician, you know, in that sense. So there's a need for it, but you sterilize spirituality if it becomes purely an intellectual exercise. That's not the meaning. They asked Einstein, can you explain a sunset in terms of pure physics? He said, yes, you can, but if you do, it loses its meaning. It's the music, it's the beauty that really gives it its meaning, you know. And really, that's when we think of God, we don't think of the mathematical structure underlying the unified field, you know, the one thing out of which everything came. There is a physics to it, unified field theory. But what we think of when we think of God is the music.